So this bike's made in China.
Just like me.
Oh, there's so many jokes we can make. All right. Hello everyone, my name is Ian and you're watching Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. And if you're new here and you like this kind of content, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Now, with adventure motorcycling still on its meteoric rise around the world, it does make sense that more manufacturers are trying to get into the adventure motorcycle game. Moto Morini. This is an Italian nameplate with history going back into the 1930s, which is a pretty long time. So Moto Morini, having really been somewhat unsuccessful, being passed around to different ownership groups over the years and really failing to have any sort of renaissance with their motorcycles or any sort of financial success, and facing continued red numbers on their balance sheets, they actually sold the nameplate to Chinese scooter manufacturer Zhongning Vehicle Group back in 2018 for the price of about 10 million euros. So today, Moto Morinis like this bike here, they are styled, designed, and developed in Italy. However, they are manufactured in China. This bike here, the X-Cape 649 Adventouring, is Moto Morini's adventure touring motorcycle, and I think is their most popular model at this point. With its Italian good looks and styling, a smooth running parallel twin-cylinder engine, Brembo brakes, Pirelli tires, tubeless wheels, large TFT dash, switchable ABS. This motorcycle is really quite the bargain, coming in at $8,299 US. Did I also mention that for that price you get a 3-year unlimited mile warranty, which is pretty amazing. And also for adventure riders who always say they're looking for that simplicity from their adventure bike, you might like this bike because you're not going to find any fancy electronics here. Just switchable ABS and that's it. Now, it's not all rainbows and puppies with the Moto Morini X-Cape 649, and like I do in all my comprehensive reviews, I'm going to cover the negative points just as much as I cover the positive points. And right up front, some of those negative points are going to be limited ground clearance and limited suspension travel for serious off-road riding, a limited dealer network, and really just a question mark in terms of their reliability. So today we'll do my normal in-depth review. I already did a first ride vlog on this bike, so if you're interested in that, I'll link that here below to check it out. So this review will be a little bit shorter because I've already done that first ride vlog. So I'll show you the seat height and the riding position. We'll show you the passenger. We'll talk about the maintenance. We'll show you the specs, features of the bike. We'll take a tour. We'll get it out on the road and off-road for a full test. We'll come back here, we'll summarize the pros and cons, we'll discuss the competition, and then we'll have some final thoughts. So with that, let's get riding. Let's do our sound check. Not this sound check, but this sound check. All right, so seat height and riding position on the X-Cape. We're looking at about 33 inches or about 830 millimeters. Now, I believe there are lower and taller seats available to suit you. But once you put the seat on here, you can't adjust it up and down. So there's no adjustability in it as you get with some bikes. At 33 inches or 830 mil, that's pretty low for an adventure bike. It's definitely lower than average, I would say. That's one of the benefits of, or sort of side effects of having that more limited suspension travel, which hurts you off-road. It helps you in terms of your seat height. So I am about 5'10" or about 1.78 meter, 32-inch inseam. So I'll show you how I am on the bike. So getting on the motorcycle, I can flat foot on both sides at my height. So if you're a little bit shorter, this is going to be a pretty good option for some of the shorter riders looking to get into an adventure motorcycle. You can see my reach to the ground here. Now, the riding position, hopefully you can kind of see this. I feel like I have a little bit less leg room, and it's because I do. Because of the lower kind of dished out seat on this bike, I have a little bit more bend in my knee here than I'd like on an adventure bike, just for my personal comfort. It's gonna be fine for most people. It's more comfortable than a sport bike or something like that, obviously. And you can see the riding position is very comfortable, very upright, very roomy. I could do with a little more legroom at my height, but I think most of you are going to be fine with it. Does the motorcycle feel kind of a little bit tippy and top heavy? A little bit, yeah. You feel that 520 pounds, that 235 kilograms of weight. It definitely feels heavier than like a KLR 650 because it is, or a CB500X. This bike is about 80 pounds heavier than a CB500X, and you do feel that. All right, so I've brought Maggie out. Thank you, Maggie, for helping us out. So we'll show you the passenger accommodations on this bike. Now, looking at it, it looks like you got a pretty big seat there.
Yeah.
Pretty good grab handles, and it's not too tall, so it should be okay. What do you think of the styling of the bike, though?
It looks really pretty. Yeah, it does. It looks really pretty.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah.
nice looking.
Yeah.
So this bike's made in China.
Just like me.
Oh, there's so many jokes we can make. All right. So why don't you go ahead? I'll put the passenger pegs down
Okay.
and go ahead and climb aboard.
If it's made in China, that makes sense that it is not as tall.
Well, it's designed in Italy.
Oh, okay.
Designed in Italy,
Okay.
made in China.
Okay.
I'm designed in Germany and made in USA.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you think? How does it feel back there?
Feels pretty roomy. I mean, I don't feel... It's not as roomy as one of the other bikes that I tried, to be honest. There's so many, I don't remember.
That's okay.
Yeah, but it feels... I mean, I feel safe sitting here.
You feel safe? Okay.
I do, and the handle is pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, I can grab the handle. It's not too low
Yeah.
or too tall or too much like far back that I feel that I have to be in a really awkward position to grab.
Okay. And how does the seat feel?
It's a little bit hard though.
The hard,
is that
yeah.
normal? I
Yeah,
mean,
that's
I don't
normal. It's
know.
better than being too
Okay.
soft. But it looks like
Okay.
a pretty wide seat and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
I mean, keep in mind Maggie's pretty small. So, it's pretty small for a passenger.
Pretty small for American.
Yeah, she's extra small in American sizing. So anyway, well, thank you, Maggie. Why don't you go ahead and jump off?
Okay.
All right, let's cover the specs of the Moto Morini X-Cape. So let's start with some weights and dimensions. So this bike is 518 pounds or 235 kilograms, fully fueled up, ready to ride. Now, yes, that is a little bit on the heavy side for a bike in this category and for a bike with a 650 engine. We'll discuss this more a little bit later. Our suspension rake angle, which is the angle of the front forks here, which affects the handling, is a little bit steep at 25.5 degrees, contributes to a little bit of nervous or twitchier handling in certain off-road situations, things like sand and things like that. We'll discuss that more when we go out for the ride. It's got a pretty short 58-inch wheelbase. Ground clearance, we have about 6.8 inches or about 175 millimeters, which is pretty low, a little bit limiting for an adventure bike, but compared to some of its direct competitors like V-Stroms, CB500Xs, it's kind of in that category. It's kind of normal, I suppose, with some of its peers in that way. Let's talk about the engine. So it is derived from the Kawasaki Versys 650 engine, but it's made by CF Moto in China. So it's a liquid-cooled parallel twin, double overhead cam, 649cc. She's putting out 61 horsepower or 44 kilowatts at 8,250 RPM. Torque is 40 foot-pounds or 54 newton meters at 7,000 RPM. Transmission, it's a 6-speed cable-actuated clutch. There's no quick shift and no slip assist, and you wouldn't really expect those things at this price point. And of course, we're hooked up to a chain final drive. Let's talk about the suspension and the chassis a little bit. So the front forks are Marzocchi inverted forks. They're fully adjustable. You can see you've got adjustments here on the top, and yeah, the travel is a little bit limiting, 6.3 inches or 160 millimeters. Rear suspension, you can see in here, is 140 millimeters of travel or 5.6 inches, which is not really enough for, rugged off-road riding at higher speeds. It just doesn't have enough stroke, but it's okay for how most people are going to use this bike. and we'll look at that in the riding section. Now you do have adjustable rebound, and you do have a preload adjustment up here, but I don't see how you're gonna do that without removing the shock from the motorcycle. So you don't have remote preload adjustment. For our braking here, we have Brembo front calipers. They're just 2-piston calipers, so you've got pistons on this side, not on the other side. So they're not super strong, but they're still quite good. And the discs are about 300 millimeters. And then you have a rear single piston Brembo caliper in the back. Now the ABS is switchable. You have to, push some buttons there on your dashboard to get that to turn off, but you can turn it off. Tires and wheels. So it's really nice to see they went with this. They went with these Acront tubeless system wheels. It's a 19-inch front wheel, and you can see the way they do tubeless is they have this raised center part of the rim, which allows the spokes to go in here. Then there's another surface behind that, which then, so the air doesn't leak out from the spoke hole. So I think that's a pretty good design compared to some, and I do like to see that. And it is really nice for a bike in this price point to have tubeless wheels. People like tubeless wheels because it's really good for people who travel and commute. You can easily fix a puncture with just a plug kit instead of having to, dismount the tire from the bike, or dismount the tire from the wheel, I should say. Speaking of the rear tire, it's a 17-inch rear tire, and the width on your rear tire is going to be 150, and the width on the front, I believe, is going to be, it's a 110/80/19. The bike comes with these Pirelli Scorpion Rally STR, which are kind of like an 80% pavement, 20% off-road tire. They're okay in dirt and gravel, but don't take them in mud or sand or anything like that. Let's talk about our fuel capacity here. So the fuel tank is actually, this is a plastic cover which goes around this whole part. So if you damage this, you can replace the plastic part and you're not damaging the metal part. Our capacity is 4.7 gallons or about 18 liters. That gives us a range, because the bike's pretty economical with fuel, you're gonna get a range of about 200 miles or 320 kilometers. The fuel consumption that I see is around 45 to 50 miles a gallon, or in that, 4.7 to 5.3 liters per 100 kilometer range. So pretty good fuel range on this bike. I like that they gave us a pretty good sized fuel tank. Okay, let's talk about maintenance. So I read the owner's manual for this bike. The oil change, they want you to change oil. It's kind of interesting. They say every 6 months. They don't specify a mileage. So I think that's kind of interesting there. Valve adjustments are really long on this bike, so you don't have to worry about checking your valve clearances all the way into 26,000 miles or about 42,000 kilometers. Then of course you're going to have to do chain maintenance, which is normal for a bike in this category. I don't think there's anything in this category that's going to have shaft drive. All right, let's talk about battery access and air filter access and how the seat comes off and on. So you can see the seat pops off, or the rear passenger seat pops off with the key here. But in order to get the driver's seat off, you have to use a 10 millimeter socket to take these two bolts out. So I've got my little power ratchet here. We'll just do that real quick here, one-handed. Okay, that pulls off. Now, once we pull off the driver's seat, we can see the battery here. It's a lead acid battery. You can see fuses, some connectors, paperwork, toolkit, things like that. Now, unfortunately, the air filter on this motorcycle is under the fuel tank. So it's not under the seat. So if you want to service your air filter, if you ride in a lot of dust, a lot of off-road, then it could be a consideration that you will have to remove this fuel tank to get access to the air filter. Okay, let's take a tour and show you the features of the bike. I like to start with the lighting. So right now I've got the low beam headlights on. You can also see there's these kind of distinctive running light patterns here. Also, you have LED turn signals. Let me go ahead and turn on the hazard flashers here. I like that they gave us four-way flashers. So there you can see the four-way flashers showing you the rear lighting. You have LED tail light, and you have more LED turn signals. Now, one interesting thing is, let's turn those off. You see this switch right here. This toggles between your running light and your low beam. So you see here, when I toggle that switch, if you just want to have the running lights, you can have that on during the day, or if you want to run your low beam during the day, you can. So it's interesting that they give you a toggle switch here. And then the high beam is a push-in switch like this. And now you can see or on our high beams. It is nice to get all LED lighting, especially at this price point. All right, let's continue with the tour. We've talked about all the stuff down here. It does have a low front fender, pretty exposed exhaust, the side fairing panels, the windshield. So the windshield, let's talk about this. It is adjustable. So what you do is it's kind of a lot of tension. You turn this and then you can pull the windshield up and down. Now I've been finding that you really can't, well, you kind of can do it with one hand if you grab the mechanism here. It might just needs to be lubricated a little bit, and you can push it up and down. It's a little bit sticky, and then it locks into place like that. Really nice to have an adjustable windshield on a bike at this price point in this segment. All right, let's continue with the tour. So we're working our way around, side fairing, engine. You can see the frame here, skid plate and underneath. So let me kind of lay down on the ground here to show you what's going on. So here's the bottom of the engine. Here's the exhaust headers coming out. And you can see the exhaust headers here going under the bike, and then here's like the collector, or I guess the catalytic converter is probably in there. The skid plate is, not really a skid plate. It's like a cosmetic kind of splash guard, so that's not going to provide any protection off-road. So one of your weak points in off-roading this bike, or vulnerable points, is going to be this right here. So you're going to have to really watch for that. They do have an accessory skid plate, but from what I've seen, it still leaves the exhaust very vulnerable. Foot pegs, you can remove the rubber inserts from the foot pegs if you want the metal serrations for off-road riding. Side fairings here, passenger grab panels, kind of a low slung exhaust. The exhaust looks pretty good in my opinion. It's not a bolt-on subframe, so the frame you can see here is all welded together as one frame. Rear brake, rear tire, we talked about all that. There's kind of like a mud guard in here like this. Rear license plate hanger with the lighting. You do get a very small cargo rack. You could attach a small bag here, but nothing too big. Passenger grab panels, two-piece seat, we showed that. It's kind of interesting how they have these big hangers here they swing way back for your passenger pegs. It's fine, nothing wrong with it, just kind of a design I haven't seen too much. It looks like there's like some threaded kind of attachment points here, maybe for crash bars, maybe for skid plate, probably one of the accessories that they have. Adjustable shifter linkage here. You can see how the shifter works. Coolant overflow bottle. And yeah, so now let's take a look at the controls. So jumping up to the controls, the mirrors, they kind of remind me of like a BMW style mirror. They do have a little buzz at highway speeds, which I'll show in that segment. You have adjustable levers, adjustable reach on your clutch and your brake, which I think is really, really nice to have that, especially considering the price of the bike. Pretty comfortable grips, passing switch. Let's see, handlebars with the riser. I want to point out, handlebars are adjustable. They've got three different, this really reminds me of KTM. You've got three different mounting holes in the upper triple clamp for the handlebar riser. So you can adjust it forward and back depending on your preference. That's great. That's so nice that they have that. You have dual USB ports here. We've got a big TFT. So let's get into that. Oh, over here you've got the four-way flashers. You've got the running light thing I showed you, start switch. Turn signal stuff, horn, pretty much what you would expect. The controls are pretty simple for the TFT, so it takes a second for this to boot up. You can see the boot time here. She's booting up, X-Cape, we get the graphics, okay. Now, to navigate through, it's not too bad. You've got the up and down buttons and you've got back and set. So if I go up and down, you can scroll through here. You can do music controls, phone controls, navigation. I'm not gonna show all the phone integration because this video would be way too long. If I go in here to settings, I hit set, I go into there. I can go and look at my bike info. It has tire pressure monitoring, TPMS, which is really, really cool to see that. It's reading out in KPA, kilopascals. I don't know if you can change that to PSI, I haven't looked into that. And it always runs very, very cool. You can see negative 53 Fahrenheit, so she's a very cool running bike. Connections to your phone. Now you can change the display. So if I go in here and hit view, I can change it to, let's see, if I hit set, I can go into daytime mode is the white background you saw. If I want night mode, let me show you how that looks like. I kind of prefer the night mode. So you can see now it's kind of darkened out with the white lettering. I kind of prefer this, so I'm gonna leave it in that setting. You get a trip computer down here. Now you can go down here and I think scroll through, let's see, Yeah, trip 1, trip 2. I guess that's it for that. So trip 1 and trip 2. All right, and then we can go in here. This is actually not a riding mode. I've come to learn it's really just a display mode. So if I hit that and I change it to off-road, it just changes the display. It gives you this knobby tire, which looks cool, honestly. Shows you the tag, the speedometer. So it's really giving you the same information, just changes how the screen looks. Now to turn off the ABS, you first have to go to this off-road display mode. Then you have to hold down set, and then it's going to, yes, see it comes up, I went away now. Comes up here, ABS, then you can scroll down and hit off, select that, then the ABS will then turn off. Now, if you cycle the key like this, guess what? All that's gone. You're gonna have to redo that. So it's like some bikes where the ABS resets with the key. I know a lot of people who buy this bike are not gonna be turning the ABS off very often, so I don't think it really matters, but just something that bears mentioning. Overall, you get a nice big TFT dash. It's easy to read, and I do enjoy the display on this bike. We're at my usual freeway testing area here in the Banning Pass, where today there's about a 30-mile-an-hour wind coming out of the east. So we're gonna have a tailwind, which is gonna be making things a little bit quieter, which is good for filming, but it's gonna make it seem like we're not going as fast. So talking about this bike, you know, up on the highway, so like in the Western USA here, I mean, traffic moves fast. I mean, 80 plus miles an hour, you know, you're talking over 120, 130 kilometers an hour. See, the acceleration of the bike is really pretty strong. I mean, 60 horsepower is enough, right? It's enough. Some other things I would say about this bike on the highway, the gearing is, you know, pretty generous. Like when you're up in top gear like this, it's nice to have that 6th gear because the bike is pretty relaxed at 70. We're doing 76. Let's bring her up to 80. See, traffic's moving about 80. So yeah, 80 miles an hour. Oh, it's so dusty. It's like dust hitting me, or like sand. Anyway, you know, the bike is 5,500 RPM. There's a tiny bit of buzz in the handlebars, but not very much. It's not bad. The wind protection is okay. The windshield really could be wider. I have it up right now. The mirrors do buzz a little bit. They have a little bit of blurriness and buzz, but it's not too bad. The bike doesn't feel stressed out. Let me bring it up to 85. Yeah, 85, a little bit more vibration, but not bad. The bike doesn't feel stressed doing this. This is the advantage of having a twin cylinder over something like maybe a KLR 650 or something like that. Having that twin cylinder with that extra power, it just makes such a big difference on the highway like this. Like this would be about the top speed of a KLR 650 right here, okay? But on this bike will go over 100 miles an hour, no problem. Some comfort issues I do want to cover. I've been riding a bike for about, you know, half a day now. So the seat is kind of too soft. And you kind of go through the cushioning on the seat, and it feels kind of uncomfortable because it's too soft. Also, because the seat is kind of dished out, it kind of crushes my my man parts, if you know what I mean. I know too much information, but yeah, it kind of crushes that area of my body and kind of hurts. My legs, yeah, I could do with more leg room because they've got the seat kind of low to get that reach to the ground. What it means is that my legs are a little bit cramped, not terrible, like it's okay. But if you're a taller person, that's something that you might want to keep in mind. But it's a compromise when you get that lower seat height. That's just what happens. But really, I mean, you've got what you need, right? It would be nice to have cruise control, but you're not going to get that at this price point, and it's a cable throttle anyway. But if you need to do highway commuting and just kind of cover miles, I think this bike is pretty good. I would maybe change the seat. I would maybe put on some gel grips or change the windshield. But really, other than that, you wouldn't really need to do anything. All right, so testing this bike in a urban environment, you know, it's good. I mean, this kind of bike, these smaller or mid-size adventure bikes are really good in urban environments. They're a little bit tall, a little bit heavy, but you know, good power to get away from the lights. They're pretty narrow if you do lane filtering or lane splitting in your part of the world. Engine heat, so yeah, people have asked about, is there engine heat? There is some, but I would say it's not very much. It's not real noticeable. There's certainly a lot of bikes I've tested lately that have been way hotter than this. So I don't think engine heat is a big issue, but if any of you have experienced that, let me know down in the comments. But it doesn't seem to be too much of an issue with this small little engine. It's not putting in a lot of heat. Yeah, other than that, for urban use, I really don't have any complaints about it. Let's try to filter up through the traffic here. I mean, it's narrow enough that, you know, you can slice through traffic pretty easily. So yeah, it's getting really windy. The tropical storm is moving in. We're actually under a tropical storm warning right now. So we're supposed to be prepared for damaging winds up to 60 miles an hour. And then they say catastrophic flooding, 6 to 12 inches of rain, which in this part of the world is unheard of, and we really can't handle that. So tomorrow's going to be very interesting. But these are just the outer bands of Hurricane Hillary starting to come in right now. All right, let's send the X-Cape through some twisties here and see how she does. Full power. Full power. All right, let me slow down a little bit. So this is actually really enjoyable for me because it's 60 horsepower. I can use the full power of the bike, even in these corners and these roads with these, you know, winding mountain roads. I can use all the power. It's not gonna like do anything crazy, and it's kind of fun to be able to use the entire amount of power that a bike has. The engine likes to rev. I mean, I'll show you the difference. If I put it in 5th or 6th gear, you know, 3,000, 4,000 RPM, there's really not really any acceleration to speak of. So you really have to be willing to get that motor. I mean, use the tach, like Fortnite said in his recent video. You paid for the whole tachometer, use all of it. That's where the engine likes to be, is in those higher RPMs. The handling for twisty paved roads is pretty good. The 19-inch front wheel, so it doesn't handle as well as maybe the Versys 650 because, you know, that bike has a smaller front wheel. Also, having these, you know, somewhat off-road tires is going to affect it a little bit. But it handles well. It's fun to ride on mountain roads, and if that's something you're going to do a lot of, it is a good bike for that. There's no traction control, but you don't really need it with only this much power on tap. The ABS is nice to have. The ABS, you have these wide handlebars to throw the bike around, so it's a pretty good motorcycle for doing twisting mountain roads. And the nice thing about being an adventure bike, it's upright, it's comfortable. You can do this all day and your body's not going to feel like, you know, you were run over by a bus or something. Okay, let's do a little bit of like a 0-100 to, or 0-80 to 0 kind of a thing here. Full power. Full brake, full brake, full brake, full brake. So yeah, The acceleration braking is adequate. It's not thrilling, but it's good enough. The brakes are good. They're not great. They're just okay. The ABS, you know, you can see I was in full ABS intervention there. It's good. The ABS is fairly sensitive, and it kind of chatters, but that's just doing what it does. Brembo brakes, that's nice to have. You know, this motorcycle, it's a secure ride. It's safe. It feels safe. You know, it doesn't feel intimidating. And it's going to be, you know, pretty good for newer riders, but it's not like so slow that if you're in a more experienced rider that you couldn't enjoy riding it. Like, it has enough power there, especially if you're willing to really let that motor rev all the way out. Now, you will, I have noticed that I do scrape my pegs and my boots a little bit more on this bike than some other bikes. I'm not sure why that is, but it seems like cornering clearance, if you're a super aggressive road rider and you want to really get the thing cranked over, you might notice some cornering clearance issues, but I don't think it's going to be an issue for most people. All right, X-Cape off-road. Now, we already did this in the first ride vlog, if you saw that, so we're going to be kind of brief with this. I'm going to take it on a little bit rougher trail, kind of washed out, more rutted, have to go a little bit slower. We've already talked about some limitations, right? Just because of the design of the bike. It doesn't have a lot of suspension travel. You do get the tubeless spoke wheels, a 19-inch front wheel, which is really good. But, you know, this exhaust and everything, and this low-hanging engine and exhaust here, it's just, yeah, that's kind of one of the limitations that you have. Also, the weight of the bike at, you know, 520 pounds or 235 kilos is quite a bit of weight to handle once things start getting rough. And the thing is, it's not terribly top heavy or tippy, but it is. Like, once you start getting over to like here, it does feel pretty tippy. So to turn off the ABS, you have to do a bit of a procedure here. So you've got to scroll down to ride mode, hit set. You've got to set that to off-road. All that does is change the dashboard. It doesn't do anything else, which I find very strange. Why even have that? Then what you have to do is hold down set, and if you hold, no wait, that didn't work. Okay, hold down set again. Okay, and then it comes up on a prompt and says ABS on off. If we have to scroll down to ABS off and then hit OK, and then a triangle comes up and says ABS off. Now, if you power cycle the bike with the key, that's all going to reset. So if you want to keep your ABS off, I'd recommend just killing the bike with the kill switch if you're just stopping for a few minutes. So let's put the windshield down. It is nice having an adjustable windshield. That's a great feature that not many bikes in this price range have, because off-road you can get it out of your way. On the highway you can put it up to get more wind protection. So, you know, we've talked about the suspension of this bike. It's pretty soft and pretty compliant, which is good when you're riding more slow because it doesn't beat you up too much. But like hitting stuff, whoa, like that, I don't know if you guys heard that, but that was the suspension metal to metal bottoming out. And I'm going slow, like I'm not going fast, right? So that's the thing here, is that I bottomed the back out there. This is not a bike for aggressive off-roading, and you know who you are. If you're an off-road type person who really likes to go fast off-road, just look at a different bike, right? I mean, get a T7, get a V-Strom 800, KTM 890, whatever. This is more for like off-road exploration, cruising, you know, doing a little bit of dirt and gravel, but nothing too crazy. But if you use it within its wow, jeez, man, you just can't hit stuff with this. If you use it within its limitations, it's okay. Now, sand, so we talked about the geometry a little bit, but the 25-degree rake angle is kind of steep for off-road bike, and when you have that, what it means is that the bike can feel more twitchy. So if you hit some soft soil or something like that, I don't know why we have a check engine light, but we do. if you hit some sand and stuff, it does tend to feel a little bit more twitchy than some other adventure bikes. I like to see a rake of around, you know, above 26, 27 degrees. Usually those bikes are a bit more stable than that. So I don't know why I have a check engine light. But this is, you know, this is a good trail for this bike. The bike's totally capable of cruising through here. You just got to take your time and not hit anything too hard. I hope I didn't get a... No, my front wheel looks okay. I just bottomed on that rock really badly. All right. So you see, if you kill the bike, as long as you don't power cycle the key, your ABS will stay on. The ergonomics are okay. For standing up, it's a little bit weird. I bottomed the forks again there. For standing up, it's not great. Like, the foot pegs are a little bit too high and a little bit, maybe, I don't know, far forward maybe. The bars are kind of weird, but it's okay. You can stand and ride. It's just not optimum, and you can adjust with all of that if it was your own bike. Sitting down and riding feels pretty natural. Yeah, you know, it's okay. It's just okay off-road. It's better than, you know, the Versys 650 because you have that bigger front wheel, you have a little bit better suspension stuff. I don't think it's better than a V-Strom 650. Maybe a tiny bit. It's hard to say without testing it back to back. CB500X, yeah, kind of reminds me of the CB500, but the difference is this is like 80 pounds heavier than the Honda 500X, and that's a lot of weight. That's a big difference. Like, there's no way to get around that. See, the bike just doesn't like to be rushed at all. I mean, 140 millimeters of rear suspension travel, you know, that's not what you want to see on an off-road bike. I mean, you know, there's a reason that dirt bikes have, you know, 300 millimeters of travel front and back. Ooh, she's getting a little rough here. Some big ruts and stuff like this. You know, it's always amazing where you can actually take a motorcycle off-road as long as you just respect how not to go too fast and just pick a good line and kind of just pluck your way through it. The difference with those higher end bikes is if you want to ride faster and in more control at those higher speeds and be able to clear big obstacles and go off jumps and hit rocks and logs and things, that's where a bike like this starts to have some serious limitations. Probably don't want to go into that right there. Yeah. Yeah, this trail's really rutted out. If we hit some rocks and stuff, you know, it's fine. You just don't go too fast. In terms of the power delivery and things like that, it's very controllable, very smooth. So like here in this sand, you know, the bike feels a little bit nervous. It's not terrible. Yeah, the power is such a gentle delivery. It makes the bike pretty easy to ride. It's not jerky at all or anything, so I appreciate that. That's good for newer riders. I mean, you can still have fun. You can still have plenty of fun on this bike off-road.
All right, I really hope you guys enjoyed going on that ride with me. It was a great day to go for a ride, even with the tropical storm coming in. So let's talk about, or let's just briefly summarize the pros and cons. I'm not going to go into these because we've really covered them throughout the length of this in-depth review, but here's a summary of the pros and cons. So for me, the pros are the motorcycle's very comfortable. It has a relatively smooth engine. It has excellent styling, in my opinion. It comes in at a great price point. It has an amazing warranty. And also it offers some refreshing simplicity for a modern day adventure bike. What are the downsides or the cons as I see it to this bike? Number one, it is rather heavy for its category. If you look at its engine size, where it fits in the adventure bike marketplace, this is getting a little bit heavy. And I'm not really sure where all the weight is coming from, but it is what it is. Just be aware of it. A few other things, the off-road ability is somewhat limited due to the soft suspension, the limited suspension travel, and the limited ground clearance. We've covered that. Limited dealer network, we've talked about this. You know, 25 or 30 Moto Morini dealers in the US right now, compared to someone like Honda, 1,000 dealerships for Honda motorcycles. So yeah, that is something you're going to be facing. How much of an issue is that for you? Depends on sort of how you use your bike, where you live in the country, and if you're willing to get parts shipped, and if you have independent repair shops or do your own work. All those things are going to come into play there. The other thing is we don't know about the reliability. I'm not saying it's unreliable. I'm not saying that at all, because that would be irresponsible. I'm just saying we just don't know. If I had to guess, I think it's actually going to be pretty reliable because it's based on a Kawasaki engine design and a Kawasaki frame, and there's not a whole lot here that I really could see going wrong. All right, so what are the direct competitors for this bike? In other words, if you're looking at this or watching this review, what are the other adventure bikes you should be looking at that sort of stack up to this in the price, engine size, features, things like that? So there's 4 or 5 bikes that I've kind of identified, in my opinion, at least here in the US, that I think are really good competitors for this. We've got Honda CB500X, we've got Suzuki's V-Strom 650 XT, we have the V-Strom 800DE, we have this Yamaha Tenere 700, and we have the Kawasaki KLR 650. So let's start first with Honda's CB500X. In my opinion, it's kind of what this bike reminds me a lot of. It's like a CB500X with like 10 more horsepower, if that makes sense. CB500X, the Honda is a lot lighter, about 80 pounds or what, 30 kilograms or so lighter. That's quite a bit. The Honda has less power and torque than this bike, you know, so that is an advantage to the Moto Morini. The CB500X is a little bit smaller motorcycle. What I mean is that the ergonomics have a little bit less room, although I think legroom's kind of similar between the two. It just feels like a slightly smaller bike than this does. That could be a good or bad thing depending on what you're looking for. The abilities of the Honda, you know, I would have to say the current CB500X with the updated suspension, the 2022 and later, I feel like that suspension is actually a little bit better than this bike. I remember being able to ride the bike a little bit faster before I bottomed it out. In terms of its overall abilities, I think it's pretty similar. This definitely does have noticeably more power, and I think this is a bit better at those high speeds on the highways. You just have a bit more power in reserve, but it's not an earth-shattering difference. The other difference is that on a Honda, you get cast wheels, which are not great for off-road. They're okay normally, but it is nice to have the tubeless spoke wheels on this bike. Now, of course, I forgot to mention, I should have started with this, the price point of the Honda is about $1,000 less than the Moto Morini. So for $1,000 less, you're getting a more established brand, shall we say. All right, let's move on to the Suzuki V-Strom 650 XT. That bike comes in around $9,600, so that's about what? About $1,400, $1,500 more than this bike. So what are you getting for the extra money with the Suzuki? You're getting more power and torque and a smoother 90-degree V-twin engine on the Suzuki. It's just a nicer feeling engine. It's smoother, it sounds better, just more refined with the Suzuki. The Suzuki also gives you adjustable traction control, which you don't get on this bike. The Suzuki has maybe a little better wind protection, a little bit better highway comfort out there on those highways. Off-road ability, I think, is kind of similar between the two bikes. The Suzuki is also lighter. And of course, with Suzuki, you're getting their, you know, very well-established record of reliability and, of course, that better dealer network. Now, what about Suzuki's V-Strom 800DE? I've reviewed this recently. It's a brand new model. Now, that bike is quite a bit more money. It's around $11,000 to $11,500. So that's kind of almost in a different category. Well, frankly, it is in a different category really than this, and it's kind of unfair to put that in here, but I know some of you are going to ask about it. If you do spend the extra few $1,000s, what are you getting with the 800 V-Strom? The 800 V-Strom is so much better than this bike in every single way, just being honest, and you are getting value for that extra money that you pay. The V-Strom 800 has a lot more power, a lot more torque, a lot more features. You get, you know, advanced electronic riding aids. It's a more comfortable bike. It's a faster bike. It handles much better than this. It's lighter than this. Off-road ability is in another universe compared to this bike in terms of its suspension ability. The V-Strom 800DE is super legit, like really, really good motorcycle to do everything with, and it's going to be hard to beat that bike. So if you have the extra cash, The V-Strom's a little bit taller, I believe, as well, maybe just a smidge taller than this, but you are getting so much more suspension travel, getting a 21-inch front wheel, but you're not giving up highway ability as compared to this. What about a Yamaha T7? Yeah, we've talked about T7 in so many videos. The T7 is much more off-road capable than this. You've got the ground clearance, you have the suspension, you have the motor, the chassis. It is, a higher spec motorcycle and a more expensive motorcycle at around that $11,000 mark for the base model T7. How would you choose? If you're going to do a lot of aggressive higher speed off-roading and you're more an experienced rider, I think the T7 is going to be better. Also, you need to be a little bit taller to handle the T7. It's definitely a higher seat height than this. If you just kind of want to cruise the off-road stuff, cruise the dirt, you're not really interested in going too fast, you don't need to have the best adventure bike for off-roading, then this could make you very, very happy and save you a lot of money. What about a Kawasaki KLR 650? So that's an interesting comparison. So the KLR is one of the bikes that's actually cheaper than this. Now the big difference with the KLR 650 is, number one, it is lighter by about 50 pounds than this bike, which is noticeable. Off-road, the KLR is quite a bit better. On-road is where this bike does excel over the KLR. This has a twin-cylinder engine, a lot smoother, a lot more horsepower, a lot more ability with the top-end speeds. You know, KLR is pretty much maxed out around 85 or 90 miles per hour. This can go well over 100 without too much issue, so that's a big difference there. I think if you're tilting more to that 50-50 off-road, on-road riding, I think the KLR might be a better choice and you would save some money. If you're riding mostly on the road though, I do think this is pretty compelling for $8,000 to get everything this offers over the KLR, especially the twin-cylinder motor. Final thoughts on the Moto Morini X-Cape 649. I'm doing this part completely unscripted and just kind of telling you exactly what I'm feeling right now. So I think what we have here is a really interesting and pretty compelling new model from a new, I put new in quotes because not really new, but a manufacturer that's under new ownership being produced in China. This bike is decently powerful, relatively comfortable, really well equipped, nicely finished, has great components, looks great, has an amazing warranty, and really can do a lot of the type of riding that a lot of people who are getting into adventure riding really need to do. Are there some question marks with this bike in terms of the dealer network, parts availability, reliability? Absolutely. Of course, those are question marks right now. However, in some other countries here, not in the US, but other countries overseas, people have been running these bikes for a couple years now, maybe even more than that, and they seem to be very highly rated. So if you're one of those folks, you have experience like that, please chime in here below in the community in the comments and let's have a discussion about it because I'm really curious to know. I've already shared with you that I personally feel that there doesn't seem to be a whole lot here negative or things that could go wrong. I don't have too many concerns with this bike. I don't have a crystal ball, I can't see the future, I don't know how the company's going to do, how they're going to grow their dealer network, or how these bikes are going to hold up in a very, very long term. But to the best of my ability to be able to test this bike, it seems like a really, really compelling choice for the price point for everything that you're getting. And I highly recommend that you check this bike out and put it on your shopping list. All right, so I hope this video was informative and useful. Please support independent journalism here at Big Rock Moto. The only way I keep doing this is because of your support. Use my affiliate links, join Patreon, do all the things like that. It really helps the channel out more than you know. Thank you so much for watching. Ride safe, and I'll see you out there.